All right, so this week we will get a bit more practice with the factored form, so involving the two x-intercepts. And then after that, then I have an assignment that will hopefully kind of bring together everything we've done with parabolas so far. So before we get into this factored form and this expanding, just kind of a quick review of what we saw last week. So last week we looked at that factored form of the parabola. And first of all, we know it's a parabola because it has an x times an x squared. We know it's a U-shaped graph. And we know that this form gives you the x-intercepts. So the two numbers that are in the brackets, you just swap the signs and that tells you where the x-intercepts are. And the a value, that was telling you the direction, right? Positive up, negative down. And it told you the step pattern. How quickly is it growing or going downwards? So just to give you kind of a quick example, we saw ones like this last week. So in this particular case, we have a parabola because it has an x times an x squared. And we know the x-intercepts because it's in factored form. We would switch the signs. X-intercepts are -1 and +4. You could start to do a little bit of a rough sketch, right? -1, +4. And the 2 out front would tell you that it's opening upwards, and it would tell you the step pattern. Right? Remember, basic step pattern is 1, 3, 5. Here you would double all of them. So our step pattern would be 2, 6, 10. And from there, you could figure out, okay, over 1 up 2, over 1 up 6, and you could sketch in the graph and it would look something like that. Right, so far we've looked at our standard form. That's the one where you expand it out, and then our factored form here. And so far the factored one it's nice for graphing, right? Because if you can have your factored form, it's pretty easy to turn that into a graph. So last week we also looked at multiplying some of these brackets out, right? Expanding those brackets out, where if two brackets are touching, it means a multiplication. And if you multiply each term in the bracket by every other term in the bracket, you can get back into your standard form, or the expanded form. And we looked at it in two ways, using the chart and also using the FOIL, the shortcut method. We're just going to get a bit more practice with that, but this time there might be some extra coefficients in there. So in this case, an extra 2 multiplying in, or another coefficient multiplying at the front. So these ones are just a little bit more tricky, not really anything new to them. You just have to be a bit more careful with the coefficients. Let's do this example here first. All right, so here I have 2x plus 3 times x minus 4. This is a factored form. We want to convert it into standard form. We might want to do that because the standard form gives you a bit of different information. It might be easier to substitute numbers in standard form. For whatever reason, we want to expand this, multiply it out, convert it into standard form. I'll do both methods, and then you can choose which method you want to use. So I'll start off with the chart method. So remember, in the chart, you would just copy each one of these brackets into a row and a column. So 2x plus 3 would be 2x plus 3, and then x minus 4 would go down here, x minus 4. And then it's just a matter of filling in the chart. You multiply each row with each column to fill in the boxes inside. So in this case, x times 2x would give us 2x squared. X times 3 would give us 3x. 2x times negative 4 would give us negative 8x. And 3 times negative 4 would give us negative 12. Okay, so that's really our expanded form there in purple. All we need to do is just simplify it down. I think there's some like terms there. So we'll just rewrite it one more time, and then we're done. Right, so it's really no different than we were expanding before. It's just that extra coefficient in there is still sticking around, right? 2x times x is a 2x squared. So let's rewrite it one more time here. So 2x squared plus 3x minus 8x minus 12. And then I think we do have these two like terms that we mentioned earlier, right? X and x terms. So 3x minus 8x becomes minus 5x minus 12. And there's our standard form. All right, so that equation there, it's exactly the same as this equation. Right? It's just this one's our standard or expanded form, standard form, and that's our factored form. Right? But they would both give you the same graph. All right. Now there is also a shortcut, right? So remember we talked about maybe you don't want to draw the whole chart every time. The other option would be using the FOIL method, right? Remember FOIL stands for first, outside, inside, and last, and it just refers to where you're looking in the brackets. Right? And just make sure you're multiplying these things together. That gives you your 4 terms, and then you simplify. So I've just rewritten it one more time here. So we'll go through and do the shortcut method. You're welcome to use that method if you like it. Okay, so first thing I do, multiply the first term in each bracket. 2x times x, 2x squared. First is done. Now I multiply the outside terms in each bracket. Remember to include the sign. So 2x times negative 4 is negative 8x. Now I do the inside terms in each bracket. 3 times x is 3x. Remember, I'm keeping the sign there, right? And then I do the last term in each bracket. 3 times negative 4, negative 12. And we're almost done there. Last thing is I just look for some like terms. Once again, I get these 2x terms here. So I'll join those together. So 2x squared, I think that'll be a minus 5x minus 12. So this method is a bit shorter. That's the method that I'll move more towards using just because it is a bit quicker. But if you're not confident on it, then go ahead and keep using the chart. That's totally fine. All right, we will still use this chart next week when we start doing these backwards. Right, so next week we're going to look at going from the expanded form back into the factored form, and in that case, it is useful to use the chart because you're doing essentially the same steps but backwards. All right, once again, we got the same answer, which we expect, right? Because it's the same equation, it's the same graph, it's just written in a different way. All right, so we'll move on to the next question here. Now, before I let you try it on your own here, this one's a little bit different because the coefficient, the number up front, is actually outside of the brackets. So that doesn't really matter. I mean, that's how it's normally written in our factored form. Here it's telling you that it's opening upwards and it's the step pattern is doubled. So the step pattern is 2, 6, and 10. Right? I've multiplied my step pattern by 2, so 2, 6, and 10. But let's say we wanted to expand this out. Well, all I would do here is I would start by multiplying the 2 into the first bracket, and then I would be left with a problem similar to the first one. So if you do have a coefficient out front, just multiply it in first, and then you can multiply both brackets together. So for example, here, I would just rewrite this and I would say, okay, that 2 is going to multiply by every term in the first bracket. So 2 times x is 2x, 2 times negative 1 is negative 2. Okay, I've kind of used up that 2, right? It's in this bracket now, and my last bracket just stays the same. Now that I've multiplied that 2 in, now I just have these 2 brackets here, and I can expand those just like I did in the last problem. So at this point, I'll get you guys to pause the video, see if you can try expanding it out on your own. You can use either method or maybe practice both of them, and then we'll check back with your answer in a second. So go ahead and try those out now. All right, hopefully you had a chance to expand those 2 brackets in the green. Let's see what you got. So starting with the chart method. So chart method, I'm going to copy each bracket in. 2x minus 2. And the other bracket, x plus 4. It doesn't matter where you put them. You could write them the other way around. I normally just put the first one on top. Then you multiply every row and every column. 2x times x gives you 2x squared. Negative 2 times x gives you negative 2x. 2x times 4 gives you 8x. And negative 2 times 4 gives you negative 8. And then the last thing you need to do is just rewrite the inside there and simplify it. So rewrite it one more time. 2x squared minus 2x plus 8x minus 8. Right? We normally put it in that order, right? The x squareds, then the x's, then the numbers. So we say we put it in the decreasing degree, right? Starting from the highest exponent down to no variable. And last step, I have some like terms here. I'll join those two x terms together. Negative 2x plus 8x is 6x. And there we go. We're done. That's my expanded form. All right, you might have done it using the shortcut method, the FOIL method instead. Let's see what you would have done there. Sorry, I'll just give myself two little lines to work with here to mark off which ones I'm multiplying. All right, so I just rewrote it one more time here. And if we're using the FOIL method, we'll just go through and multiply the different terms, right? First terms, then outsides, then insides, then last. All right, so starting with the first terms. Oops. All right, first terms. 2x times x gives me 2x squared. Outside terms, 2x times 4 gives me 8x plus 8x. Inside terms, negative 2 times x gives me negative 2x. And last terms, negative 2 times 4 gives me negative 8. Right, so just go through, use FOIL, get your four terms. And like terms in the middle again, 8x minus 2x gives me 6x. And there's our expanded form, our standard form. And yep, it matches up. Looks like we did it correctly. All right, very last one. So for this one here, you are given some information. So it says determine the equation of the parabola that has x-intercepts at negative 2 and 4 and goes through the point 3, negative 10. So I think we've seen one or two like these ones before. But in this case, we need to come up with an equation for this parabola. It looks like the information we're given is the x-intercepts. So that automatically tells me, well, what form am I going to start writing my equation out? Factored form, because factored form matches up with the x-intercepts. Right? So that's going to be my easiest thing to do. So, okay, hold on. I know the x-intercepts already, right? Negative 2 and 4. So that gives me most of my equation. Okay, so factored form. I know that the x-intercepts have to be the opposite signs in the bracket. Right, so if my equation has x plus 2, that gives me an x-intercept of negative 2. And if my equation has x minus 4, it gives an x-intercept of plus 4, right? Opposite signs. And that's because if you plugged a negative 2 into the bracket, it would give you negative 2 plus 2 is 0. 0 times anything is 0. Okay, that would be an x-intercept, right? When your y value is 0, y equals 0, that is an x-intercept. So that's why that matches up, right? That's why that works for the factored form. Opposite sign to get the x-intercepts. So as soon as we're given the two x-intercepts, we know this part of our graph, or this part of our equation. The only thing we don't know is there a coefficient? Is there an a value that's multiplying out front? Okay, that's where our last piece of information comes in. We're told this parabola goes through the point 3, negative 10. Okay, so hold on. That means I have a point to work with. So now what I can do is I can just sub in that point. Substitute in the point 3, negative 10. So replace x with 3, replace y with negative 10, and then we should be able to solve for a. All right, so I'm going to go through here. I'll replace both x's with 3, and I'll replace y with negative 10. Okay, replace my x's with 3, replace my y with negative 10. Now I have an equation I can solve for x, or sorry, solve for a. Um, Now I'm allowed to do this because this is a valid point. My parabola goes through that point. So that means if I plug that point in, it has to be a valid equation. So let's go through and solve this. Brackets first. So I'll do these first. So 5 and -1. I can multiply those guys together now. 5 times -1 is -5. And solving for a, so now I will divide by -5. Divide by -5. And that gives me an a value of 2. So 2 equals a. So at that point, I'm done. I'll go back and rewrite my equation. And instead of an a, I will plug in a 2 instead because I know the value for it. Right, so now I've just rewritten my equation and I put a 2 in for my a. I know my step pattern. All right, so most of the stuff from this lesson you've seen before. We've just added, and especially for the expanding of the brackets, we've added in that extra coefficient. So there's a few practice questions for you guys to try out. And then I have a assignment for you to try this week as well. And that assignment is really just to kind of bring together everything we've seen so far before we move into some new stuff with parabolas.